After Ethan sent, "Mom, I can't agree to this," in the family group chat, 16 hours passed without a single reply. The unnatural silence made his stomach churn, but he never imagined the cost of that silence would be so brutal. His own brother had used Ethan's identity to register a shell company, siphoned 1.8 million yuan from Ethan's own project, and then turned around and reported him for compliance violations. The suspension notice from his company arrived exactly 9 hours after his mother's final ultimatum. Staring at his brother's text, "Bro, I'm sorry, I had no choice," Ethan started to laugh. A strange, hollow laugh. The laugh of a man who'd carried a 28-year-old weight and finally realized he'd been the only one holding it up. Ethan stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, a cup of coffee long gone cold in his hand. From the 32nd floor, he could see nearly half the city. The afternoon light caught the windows of distant office towers. Pedestrians streamed along the sidewalks below like water through a narrow channel. None of it registered. His mind kept circling back to that message, that single sentence he dropped into the family group chat the night before. "Mom, I can't agree to this." 16 hours. No reply. Not his mother Lillian, who usually would have called to scream at him by now. Not his father Gordon, who typically sent long, guilt-laden essays about family duty. Not even his sister-in-law Cindy, who never missed a chance to make passive-aggressive comments in the group chat. This kind of silence was worse than any fight. Ethan had known his mother for 28 years, and he understood her patterns cold. The longer Lillian stayed quiet, the bigger the storm she was brewing. The last time she'd been this silent was 3 years ago. She'd waited 3 full days, then shown up at his office with an entourage of relatives and, in front of his colleagues and clients, tearfully accused him of being an unfilial, ungrateful son. That incident had been over his refusal to give his newly renovated apartment to his younger brother Henry as a wedding gift. This time, what he was refusing was much bigger. It started 2 weeks earlier. A Saturday. Ethan was supposed to be taking a rare day off, helping his wife Anna organize their home office. They'd been married 2 years, living in a 120 square meter 3-bedroom apartment in a decent but not flashy part of the city. Anna's parents had paid most of the down payment, Ethan had covered the rest, and they split the monthly mortgage. Lillian had complained for 6 months straight about the location being subpar and the space being too small, until she learned the Gu family had fronted the majority of the down payment. Then she shut up and even praised her in-laws as generous. Ethan had thought his mother was finally mellowing with age. He later realized she'd just recognized a good deal when she saw one. His phone rang. The caller ID read, "Mom." His stomach tightened on instinct. It was absurd, a grown man, nearly 30, still getting that nervous lurch in his chest when his mother called. He exhaled, then answered. "Hey, Mom. Ethan, come home for dinner tomorrow. Your father misses you." Lillian's voice was unnervingly warm. Warm enough to set off every alarm in Ethan's head. Tomorrow. He glanced at Anna, who was organizing a drawer with her back to him, her silhouette still and quiet in the afternoon light. "Let me check with Anna about our schedule. Bring her too. I made chicken soup, and your father went out specially to buy the sea bass she likes." Lillian's tone grew even more solicitous. "You've been married 2 years now. You should come home more often. People talk." Ethan's brow furrowed. Lillian had always been civil to Anna, nothing more, nothing less. She'd never gone out of her way to cook Anna's favorite dishes. This sudden effort felt performative, and he knew better than to trust a performance. "All right," he said. "I'll tell Anna." He hung up and walked over to his wife, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Dinner at my parents' tomorrow. Mom made chicken soup, Dad got the sea bass you like." Anna turned her head, a knowing smile flickering across her face. "Okay. We'll go, then." She didn't say anything more, but Ethan knew she was thinking the same thing he was. This meal was never going to be just a meal. They arrived at the Sue family home the next afternoon. The apartment was in an old complex, a 3-bedroom unit Gordon had gotten through his former workplace decades ago. The building was older than Ethan. Over the years, he'd replaced appliances, renovated the kitchen and bathroom, but the bones of the place were what they were: cramped, dated, carrying the faint musty smell of cheap furniture that had been in use for 30 years. Lillian was coming out of the kitchen with a clay pot when they walked in, her apron smudged with grease, her face arranged in a carefully rehearsed expression of warmth. Gordon was parked on the sofa watching television. He acknowledged their arrival with a nod and nothing more. Henry and Cindy were already there, squeezed onto the other sofa. Cindy scrolled through her phone, while Henry lounged with his legs apart, cracking sunflower seeds and dropping the shells onto the coffee table. "Bro, sis-in-law, you're here." Henry looked up and grinned, revealing teeth yellowed by years of smoking. He was 3 years younger than Ethan, but looked older, stocky, balding slightly, wearing a faded polo shirt that had seen better days. Lillian always bragged about how prosperous Henry looked, which Ethan had learned to interpret as overweight. "Hey." Ethan set the fruit basket and milk cartons he'd brought on the sideboard. "You didn't have to bring anything," Lillian said automatically, even as she whisked the items into the kitchen with the speed of someone afraid they'd be taken back. "Anna, you look wonderful," Cindy said, setting down her phone to give Anna a once-over that was equal parts appraisal and calculation. She was wearing a bright pink dress, cheap but flashy, her makeup heavy, her smile perpetually hovering somewhere between friendly and sharp. Ethan had never quite trusted that smile. It reminded him of a used car salesman's. Anna smiled politely. "Thanks. Henry must be working hard. Take care of yourself." "Working hard for nothing," Cindy sighed, her eyes drifting toward Ethan. "Not like you, Ethan. Department director at a big company. You probably make several times what Henry makes, right?" Ethan didn't take the bait. He knew this rhythm: compliment, complain, ask. He'd been through it so many times he could predict the choreography in his sleep. He just gave a noncommittal hum and walked toward the dining table. "Dinner's ready, everyone sit down," Lillian called out. The table was indeed generously spread. Chicken soup steaming in a clay pot. A whole steamed sea bass in the center, its skin glistening with soy sauce and ginger. Several of Ethan's childhood favorites: braised pork belly, stir-fried greens with garlic, a cold cucumber salad. Lillian served everyone soup and made a point of putting a piece of fish on Anna's plate. "Eat up, Anna. Your father-in-law went to the market at dawn to pick this out." Anna thanked her and ate quietly. The first half of the meal passed without incident. Small talk. Pleasantries. Ethan let his guard down, just a little. Maybe he'd been wrong. Maybe this really was just a normal dinner. His mother was getting older, after all. People changed. Then Lillian set down her chopsticks and cleared her throat. Ethan's entire body went rigid. He knew that sound. He'd been hearing it his whole life, right before some demand, some accusation, some performance of maternal martyrdom. That was the sound of the trap closing. "Ethan," Lillian began, picking up her teacup and taking a measured sip. "Your brother has come across a great opportunity. He wants to open a hot pot restaurant. He's already found the location, right near the University District. Heavy foot traffic, guaranteed profits." Ethan's chopsticks paused mid-air, then continued to his bowl. He didn't respond. Lillian pressed on. "His friend said it'll pay for itself in 3 months, turn a profit in 6. Her voice grew more animated, as if she could already see the money rolling in. "Henry's been working for other people for too long. He needs to build something of his own. You can't be someone's employee forever, right?" "Mom," Henry said, adopting a tone of practiced humility, "I can talk to my brother myself." You don't have to. Nonsense, Lillian cut him off. You're my son. Of course I worry about you. Your brother is successful now. It's only right that he helps. Ethan set down his chopsticks and looked at his mother. How much? Lillian's eyes lit up. 80,000. Just 80,000. Rent, renovation, equipment, initial inventory, labor. Henry calculated everything. 80,000 covers it. 80,000. Ethan did the math silently. As a department director, he made around 35,000 a year after taxes. 80,000 was more than 2 years of his salary. His total savings, his and Anna's combined, came to just over 40,000. Money they'd been setting aside to start a family. I don't have 80,000, Ethan said evenly. Lillian's smile flickered. You have savings, don't you? And if not, you can get a loan. Your company has good benefits, the bank will approve you. You're his brother. Who else is going to help him? Ethan had heard this argument his entire life. You're the older brother had been a leash around his neck for as long as he could remember. He'd been trained to respond to it like a dog to a whistle. What's Henry's contribution? Ethan asked, turning to his brother. How much have you saved? What do you actually know about the restaurant business? Have you done market research? What's your target price point? Who's your demographic? Henry's face went red. He scratched his head, stammering. Bro, my friend, he did all the math. He's been in food and beverage for years. He knows what he's doing. What friend? What's his name? Where's his restaurant? How's it doing? Ethan pressed. Henry looked increasingly cornered, turning to Lillian for rescue like a child who'd been caught stealing. Why are you interrogating him? Lillian pounced, her patience evaporating. Your brother wants to do something with his life. All you need to do is support him. It's not like you're giving him the money, he'll pay you back when he makes a profit. You're a director, how can you nickel and dime your own family? Gordon set down his drink then, adopting his usual tone of elder authority. Ethan, your mother's right. Your brother's not as capable as you. Helping him is your duty. It's not charity, he'll pay you back first thing. Ethan was silent for a moment. Then he asked the question he'd been wanting to ask for years. What happened to Henry's job? He just changed companies last month. Don't even mention it, Cindy jumped in. That company paid peanuts. 6,000 a month, not even enough for his cigarettes. We've been married 2 years and we still haven't had a honeymoon. All my friends. Cindy. Henry cut her off, but half-heartedly, more for show than substance. He didn't seem particularly embarrassed. He seemed almost proud of being defended. Ethan watched this performance with a familiar, hollow ache. Henry was 25. He'd gone through at least 10 jobs since community college, never staying anywhere longer than 6 months. The reasons were always the same: the pay was too low, the work was too hard, his colleagues were jealous of him. Lillian always found excuses for her younger son. Undervalued. That boss had no vision. They were threatened by him. Ethan, meanwhile, had put himself through college. Student loans for tuition. Part-time jobs for everything else. After graduation, his first salary was $4,000 a month. Lillian made him send $2,000 home every month, supposedly to save for his eventual wedding. That money became Henry's bride price. Ethan found out years later, almost by accident, when his mother offhandedly mentioned the savings we had for your wedding that had gone to help your brother out. He'd never told anyone that. Not even Anna. Some wounds healed better if you never opened them. Mom, Ethan finally said, 80,000 is a big number. I need time to think. Lillian clearly wasn't satisfied, but with Anna present, she didn't push harder. She just snorted. Fine. Think it over. But I'm telling you, that location won't wait. Miss this chance and it's gone forever. The rest of the meal was cold. Lillian stopped serving Anna. Gordon drank in silence. Henry shoveled rice into his mouth. Cindy kept shooting Ethan looks like he was a deadbeat who'd borrowed money and skipped town. As they were leaving, Lillian pulled Ethan aside and lowered her voice. This thing I told you about, don't discuss it too much with Anna. She's not family. She doesn't need to be involved in family matters. Ethan looked at his mother. The wrinkles on her face were deeper than he remembered, but the calculation in her eyes was exactly the same as it had been 20 years ago. He'd seen that look when he was a child. It meant, you will do what I say, because I am your mother, and you owe me everything. Mom, he said quietly, Anna is my wife. She's not an outsider. Lillian went rigid. Then her face hardened. Married and already forgotten your mother, is that it? Ethan Sue, don't you dare forget who raised you. Ethan didn't argue. He just walked out the door. On the drive home, Anna stared out the window at the streetlights blurring past, then said something that cut straight to the bone. Ethan, have you ever noticed, your mother's demands never end, no matter what you've already given? His hands tightened on the steering wheel. His knuckles were white. The road ahead was dark, but he could still see his own reflection in the windshield, a tired man with tired eyes. He didn't answer. But he knew she was right. 10 years. From 18 to 28, he'd given and given to that family, and what he'd gotten in return was never gratitude, only more demands. Like throwing stones into a bottomless pit. You never heard them hit the ground. They just kept falling, and you kept throwing, and every year the pile of stones at your feet got a little smaller, a little lighter, until one day you looked down and realized you had nothing left to give. And still they wanted more. Over the next 2 weeks, Lillian called every single day. The tone shifted from sweet persuasion to relentless nagging, from moral blackmail to outright threats. If you don't help your brother, don't call me your mother anymore. I raised you for nothing. If your brother misses this opportunity because of you, I'll never forgive you. Gordon joined in too, posting sanctimonious articles in the family group chat about brotherly love and blood is thicker than water, always accompanied by the same parental commentary, Ethan, a man can't forget where he came from. Cindy posted a passive-aggressive status on her social media, visible only to Ethan. Some people get rich and suddenly forget what family means. They'd rather watch their own brother struggle than lift a finger. I guess money changes people. The most surprising thing was Henry himself. His younger brother actually called him, the first time in years. Henry's voice on the phone was dripping with practiced sincerity. Bro, I know I've been a screw-up. I've given you so much trouble. But this time I'm serious. I'm ready to work hard. Help me this once, and I'll pay you back double. Ethan almost wavered. Not because he believed Henry would pay him back, but because this was the first time in 25 years his brother had ever spoken to him like that. Like a human being. Like someone who actually understood that Ethan was a person with needs and limits, not just an ATM that dispensed love and cash on demand. But he held his ground. He knew the pattern, 80,000 this time, 180,000 next time, and on and on. The family was a swamp, and the deeper he fought, the faster he sank. The only way out was to stop struggling and walk to solid ground. So he sent that message, Mom, I can't agree to this. And now he was standing at the 32nd floor window, coffee stone cold in his hand, staring at the 16 hours of silence that followed. His phone buzzed. Anna, what do you want for dinner? I'll pick up groceries on the way home. Before he could reply, his phone buzzed again. A company notification. He swiped it open and his pupils contracted. It was a company-wide memo from Human Resources, sent to all director-level employees and above. The sender was the CFO, with the CEO and board secretary CC'd. The message was brief, but every word hit like a hammer. Following an internal audit, it has been discovered that Ethan Su, director of marketing, committed serious violations of company procurement procedures during the third quarter major promotional campaign. 3 vendor payments totaling 1.8 million yuan were made without the required 3-bid competitive process or tender approval. The recipient of these payments was a newly registered company that had been in operation for less than 6 months. The company's disciplinary committee has initiated a formal investigation. Effective immediately, Ethan Su is suspended from all duties pending the investigation. Ethan stared at the screen. His vision blurred for a moment, then refocused. He read the words again. And again. He knew exactly which 3 payments they were talking about. The company Henry had registered last year. His younger brother had come to him then, saying he wanted to pick up some event execution work on the side, begging Ethan to give him a shot. Ethan had hesitated, for a long time, but eventually, his heart softened. He'd lowered his standards, made excuses to his superiors, convinced them to approve those 3 orders under emergency procurement provisions. He'd verified Henry's pricing was reasonable. He'd checked the execution plan. He'd even fronted part of the deposit out of his own pocket. Nothing had gone wrong with the projects themselves. Yes, the paperwork was shaky, but he'd assumed since the work was done and the results were good, he could retroactively clean up the documentation. He'd trusted his brother. That was the key. That was what made it all possible. But someone had taken this all the way to headquarters. And they'd framed it as a serious procurement violation. Ethan took a deep breath, forcing himself to think. 6 years at this company. He knew people. He called a friendly colleague in the audit department. "Mark, it's Ethan. I saw the memo. What the hell is going on? Who reported this?" There was a pause on the other end. Mark's voice came back low and careful. "Ethan, I really can't say too much. But as a friend, the complaint was thorough. Every payment amount, date, account, approval number, all documented. They even included internal screenshots with your digital signature." Ethan's stomach dropped. A cold wave washed through him, starting at his chest and spreading to his arms and legs. His fingertips went numb. Only 2 kinds of people could get that level of detail. People inside the company. Or people on Henry's side. And those digital signature screenshots, those only existed inside the company's internal system. There was no way an outsider could access them. Unless someone inside had given them to Henry. Or unless Henry had set up something he hadn't told Ethan about. Who filed the complaint? Ethan pressed. Another long pause. Then Mark spoke quickly, as if making up his mind to say more than he should. It wasn't an individual complaint. An affiliated company flagged some irregularities during their own compliance review, and it was referred through proper channels. But Ethan, that affiliated company's legal representative is listed as you. Ethan froze. Affiliated company. Legal representative. He'd never registered any company. But then, like lightning splitting the sky, a terrible thought struck him. Last year, during Chinese New Year, Henry had brought him a stack of documents to sign. Something about family member verification for company registration purposes. Ethan had been at the kitchen counter, his hands dusted with flour, chopping filling for dumplings. Henry shoved the papers in front of him, pointed at the signature line, and said, "Just sign here, bro." Ethan glanced at them, saw the words, registration materials, and signed without thinking. He had trusted his brother. Despite everything, the laziness, the irresponsibility, the endless fires Ethan had put out, he had never once imagined his own blood would stab him in the back. He'd believed, with the naive, stubborn faith of a man who'd been too good for his own good, that family meant something. That blood counted for something beyond just obligation. He'd been wrong. Mark, Ethan said, his voice rough as sandpaper, that affiliated company's legal representative is me? Yeah. It's in the public registry. You didn't know. Mark's tone was incredulous. Ethan, you've been set up. The disciplinary committee is pulling every project file you've ever touched. You need to prove your innocence fast, or this is going to be a lot worse than losing your director position. Ethan hung up and stood there, motionless, for a long time. Outside, the autumn sky was a brilliant blue, sunlight glinting off the distant skyscrapers. But everything looked gray to him now, like the world had been drained of color. The office hummed around him, keyboards clacking, phones ringing, the distant murmur of colleagues, but he couldn't hear any of it. Just the blood roaring in his ears. He opened his phone and scrolled back through the family group chat. There it was, the message Lillian had sent last night. He'd seen it but dismissed it at the time. Now every word burned. Ethan, I'm going to ask you one more time, are you giving the $80,000 or not? If you agree, we're still a family. If you don't, then don't blame me for disowning you. Sent at 11:40 p.m. The suspension memo was timestamped 8:30 a.m. this morning. Ethan didn't want to connect the dots. But they connected themselves, forming a line that led straight to a truth he could no longer deny. He opened his contacts, found Henry's number. His thumb hovered over the call button for a long time. He never pressed it. Instead, he called Anna. When he heard her voice, warm, calm, the only steady thing in his life, his throat tightened. Anna, are you free to talk? What's wrong? She picked up immediately on the strain in his voice. What happened? I've been suspended. He forced himself to sound measured. Someone reported me for procurement violations. The company that received the payments is registered in my name. But I never registered it, Henry did, using my identity. The silence on the other end lasted a full 10 seconds. Ethan could feel the air around him thicken, could almost hear Anna's mind working through the implications. Then Anna spoke, her voice so cold it could have frozen water. Your brother. And your mother. They really think you're an easy target, don't they? Ethan started to make excuses, to defend them, the way he'd been doing his whole life. But the words died in his throat. Because he realized, in that moment, he couldn't think of a single convincing defense. Not a single reason why any of this was okay. Not a single excuse that didn't sound pathetic and empty. Come home, Anna said. This isn't the end of the world. If they want a legal battle, we'll fight one. If they want to play dirty, we'll play dirtier. He hung up and gathered his things. As he walked out of the office, his subordinates' eyes followed him, sympathy, confusion, a few barely hidden smirks. He didn't explain. He just nodded at them and stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. His phone buzzed again. Not a call this time. A text from an unknown number. Bro, I'm sorry. I had no choice. Mom said if you'd just given the money, none of this would have happened. You rejected us first. Don't blame me. Ethan stared at the message. His throat went dry. His fingers went cold around the phone. He squeezed it so hard his knuckles turned white. 28 years old. This was the first time he truly understood what heartbreak meant. Not anger. Not rage. A cold so deep it came from the marrow of his bones. His body felt hollowed out, as if someone had reached into his chest and scooped out everything that kept him standing. He leaned against the elevator wall, each breath an effort, his ears ringing with a high, thin noise. His own brother had used his identity to register a company, used his name to funnel money from his own project, and then turned around and reported him. All because Ethan refused to hand over $80,000. The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto the lobby. Ethan walked out, got into his car, and sat there for a moment, staring at the steering wheel. His hands rested there like they belonged to someone else. He thought about all the times he'd cleaned up Henry's messes. The broken neighbor's window. The schoolyard fight. The gambling debts. He'd done it every time. And every time, it only made them think he deserved to be used. Every time he showed up to rescue them, he was teaching them that he could always be counted on, that his needs didn't matter, that he would always be there to fix what they'd broken. His phone buzzed again. Same number. Bro, Mom knew about it too. She said you need to learn the hard way, then you'll understand how much your family matters. Ethan looked at that message and laughed. A strange, hollow laugh. The laugh of a man who'd carried a weight for decades, only to discover the lock was never locked. He could have dropped it at any time. He'd just been too afraid to try. He didn't reply. He screenshot both messages and saved them to a secure folder. Then he started the engine. The car hummed beneath him. The garage was quiet and dim. He'd made a decision. If they were going to use his trust as a knife in his back, then he'd use that same knife to carve his way free. He wasn't going to be soft anymore. Not for a single second. By the time Ethan got home, Anna was already there. She sat on the sofa, laptop open, several browser windows on the screen, business registration records, legal code references, and a densely annotated notes document. She looked up. Sit down. She patted the cushion beside her. I already pulled the company's registration records. Registered capital 1 million. Legal representative, you. Shareholders, Henry and Cindy, 50-50. Registration date, November 20th of last year. Address, a virtual incubator in the south of the city, no actual office. Ethan sat. He stared at the screen, at the cold, stark data. November 20th. He remembered that date. It was his and Anna's wedding anniversary. He'd booked a restaurant, bought flowers, picked out a necklace. On that same day, while he'd been celebrating his marriage, his brother had been building a trap to destroy him. There's more. Anna opened another tab. I had someone check the company's bank statements. After those 3 payments landed in the company account, the funds were transferred out within 3 days. Recipients, Henry's personal account, Cindy's personal account, and another account under the name Lillian Zhou. Ethan's head snapped up. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Anna met his eyes, her voice calm and clinical. Yes. Your mother took money too. First transfer, 200,000. Second, 150. Third, 120. Total, 470,000. The apartment went silent except for the ticking clock. Ethan leaned back and stared at the ceiling. His chest felt tight. He remembered his college years, skipping meals to send money home. His first job, living in a basement studio, still mailing $2,000 a month to his parents. His wedding, when Lillian claimed they had no money for a dowry, then turned around and bought Henry a brand new car. A $20,000 car. For a kid who couldn't hold down a job. He'd thought the wounds had healed. He'd been wrong. They'd just gone numb. And now they'd been torn open again, and the pain was worse than ever. Anna. His voice was rough. I'm taking back every cent. Every single one. I know. She took his hand. Her warmth bled through his cold skin. But we do this step by step. If we rush, we lose. They set a trap, we spring it on them. For the next 3 days, Ethan didn't go to work. Didn't contact his family. He threw every waking hour into gathering evidence. He found the original document Henry had made him sign, the one he'd been told was a family registration verification. Amazingly, it was still in his desk drawer. Henry had given him a copy for his records, and Ethan had shoved it away and forgotten it. Now he pulled it out and read it carefully. It wasn't a registration verification. It was a partnership agreement and a power of attorney, combined. The terms were clear. Ethan Sue voluntarily served as legal representative of the company and accepted corresponding legal liability. The language was dense and legal, but the meaning was unmistakable. He'd signed it. Without reading it. In the middle of making dumplings. In his brother's hurried insistence. He'd trusted. And trust had cost him everything. Ethan looked at the document for a long time, then calmly placed it in his evidence folder. He owned his mistake, trusting family, signing without reading. He accepted that. But he would not accept being destroyed for it. He wouldn't let Henry and Lillian turn his own foolishness into a weapon against him. He found more. Bank statements. Payment records. Transfers. Henry's account got $98,000 total. Cindy's got $200,000. Lillian's got $470,000. The remaining $150,000 was withdrawn in cash across multiple ATMs and couldn't be traced. That was probably Henry spending money, Ethan thought. His brother had never been good with cash, it just burned a hole in his pocket. Anna connected him to a lawyer friend of hers, a specialist in commercial disputes, mid-40s, gold-rimmed glasses, soft-spoken but incisive. The kind of lawyer who listened more than he talked, who weighed every word before he let it out. After reviewing the materials, the lawyer's opinion was clear: 3 layers to this. Criminal: your brother used your identity to register a company and receive funds. That could be identity theft and embezzlement. Civil: as the nominal legal representative, you have the right to recover assets misappropriated from the company. Employment: regarding your suspension, you can cooperate with the investigation and submit evidence that you were not the actual controlling party. But I signed, Ethan said. My signature is on that agreement. The lawyer looked at him. You signed under false pretenses. That's fraud. But we'll need supporting evidence beyond your testimony. I have evidence. Ethan opened the screenshots on his phone. The lawyer read the 2 messages from Henry. His eyebrows slowly rose. Bro, I'm sorry. I had no choice. Mom said if you'd just given the money, none of this would have happened. He looked up at Ethan. That's your brother? Yes. The lawyer was quiet for a moment. Then he set the phone down, removed his glasses, cleaned them, and replaced them. His tone was more serious than before. I've handled commercial disputes for 15 years. But a brother setting up his own brother and admitting it in writing? That's rare. Those texts are critical. Combined with the bank statements showing transfers to your mother's account, our position is very strong. I'd say we have a 90% chance of winning this. Ethan nodded. He had no more emotions left to spend. Just resolve, hard and cold as iron. I want every penny back, he said. That can be arranged, the lawyer said. But you need to understand, once you start legal proceedings, your relationship with your family is over. Permanently. Ethan didn't hesitate. It was over a long time ago. I'm just making the break visible. The lawyer nodded and said nothing more. He'd seen enough family disputes to know that some wounds went too deep to heal. Walking out of the office that evening, the autumn air carried a slight chill. Dead leaves spiraled down under the streetlights. Ethan stood on the curb and took a long, deep breath. His phone rang. Lillian. He stared at the caller ID. Then he answered. Hello. Ethan Sue. What have you done to your brother? Lillian's voice was shrill, piercing. Henry said he got a lawyer's letter. Have you lost your mind? You're suing your own brother. What kind of person are you? Ethan held the phone away from his ear. When the screaming subsided, he brought it back and said, calmly, I'm not suing my brother. I'm suing the company's actual controllers. I'm the legal representative of that company. Someone used company funds without authorization, and I have both the right and the obligation to recover them. Company funds. Legal representative. I don't want to hear your nonsense. Lillian couldn't process a word. That money was for your brother's business. You're reneging on your promise. What kind of older brother are you? The money was project funds, not my personal assets. I never authorized anyone to touch it. Ethan's voice stayed calm, each syllable deliberate. Mom, when that $470,000 landed in your account, didn't you think about where it came from? Silence. That silence was worse than the shouting. Because it meant she understood, at some level, the gravity of what she'd done. She knew the money was dirty. She'd known all along. What $470,000? Lillian's voice pitched higher, fake confused. I don't know what you're talking about. The bank statements are already pulled. Ethan said. December 3rd last year. January 15th this year. March 8th. 3 transfers, all to your account. You're telling me you don't know. Another silence. Longer this time. Ethan watched the call timer tick, 1 second, 2, 3. He could hear his mother breathing on the other end, quick, shallow breaths. Then Lillian said something that finished whatever piece of his heart was still connected to her. That was your brother's filial gift to me. What does that have to do with you? Your money, your mother spending your money, that's only right. Ethan closed his eyes. She wasn't arguing anymore. She was trying to preserve the last shred of her dignity, even if it meant blaming everything on him and pretending she was the victim. There was no reasoning with her. There never had been. Mom, he said, the last time he'd ever call her that, the court summons will arrive in a few days. You'll get it. He hung up. Then he blocked her number. He stood there on the street, waiting for the pain to hit. It never came. His heart beat steadily. His breath was even. He felt lighter, as if he'd finally put down a burden he'd carried too long. The streetlights flickered. A car honked somewhere in the distance. Life went on. He walked home. Anna was in the kitchen. Steam fogged the glass door. The table was set, 2 bowls, chopsticks, a plate of his favorite braised beef. The whole apartment smelled like home. You're back. She came out carrying a pot of noodles. Wash up. Dinner. Ethan looked at his wife, her face flushed from the steam, a smudge of flour on her apron, and felt his eyes sting. He walked over and wrapped his arms around her. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just stood there, letting him hold her. The noodles steamed. The kitchen light was warm. The whole apartment smelled like simple, honest food. Anna, Ethan said into her hair, his voice muffled, thank you. For what? You know. She patted his arm. I married you knowing you came with baggage. That was my choice. He held her tighter. 2 years ago, when he'd decided to marry Anna, Lillian had opposed it fiercely. Anna was too clever, too independent, too hard to control. It was one of the few times in his life Ethan had pushed back and made his own decision. It was also the best decision he'd ever made. After dinner, they sat in the study, reorganized all the evidence. The lawyer's letters had been sent, to Henry, to Cindy, to Lillian, giving them 15 days to return the misappropriated funds, or Ethan would proceed with litigation. Will they pay? Anna asked. No, Ethan said flatly. Lillian's already spent most of hers. Henry's probably burned through half of his $98,000. Cindy's $200,000 is as good as gone. Then what? Then they go to court. There was a hardness in his voice he'd never shown before. And in court, every piece of evidence will be laid bare. The bank statements. The texts. The forged agreement. I want everyone to see exactly what they did to me. He said it calmly. Almost coldly. But Anna noticed his fingers trembling. She knew this man was cutting the final thread binding him to his family, and she knew it hurt, even if it was necessary. She reached across the table and took his hand. Okay, she said. I'm with you. In the days that followed, things unfolded exactly as Ethan had predicted. Day 3, Henry called. Ethan didn't answer. Henry used 3 different numbers, all were blocked. Finally he sent a long text, "Bro, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. It was Mom and Cindy's idea. Just give me one chance, I'll pay you back." Ethan didn't reply. Day 5, Cindy called. Her tone was completely different. She screamed obscenities at him, ungrateful, brother-destroying, worthless. She threatened to come to his office, to ruin his reputation. Anna took the phone, calmly recorded the entire conversation, then told Cindy, "Ms. Lin, your comments constitute harassment and intimidation. This recording will be submitted as evidence in court. And if you come to his workplace, we will call the police immediately." Cindy swore and hung up. Day 7, Gordon came. He didn't call first. He just showed up at Ethan's office, but Ethan wasn't there. Gordon sat in the company lobby, telling the front desk he was Ethan's father and needed to see him. The front desk couldn't reach Ethan, so they called administration, who called Anna. When Ethan arrived, Gordon was sitting on the lobby sofa, holding a paper cup of water. He looked up as his son approached, and his lips moved soundlessly. Ethan sat down across from him. Neither spoke for a long moment. Gordon was old now. Past 60, hair mostly white, face deeply lined. He wore a faded jacket, frayed cuffs, trousers baggy at the knees. On the sleek office sofa, he looked out of place, small. "Dad," Ethan said, his tone polite but distant, "what do you need?" "Ethan." Gordon's voice shook. He stared at the paper cup in his hands. "Your mother sent me. She wants you to drop the case. She said, she can return the money." "How much?" Gordon blinked, clearly unprepared for the question. "She said, she has 80,000 in her account. She can give you that first. The rest. Henry can pay you back gradually." Ethan smiled. Barely. A thin, cold smile. "Dad, the total misappropriated is 1.8 million. The project funds are the main part, and I personally fronted over 100,000 in deposits as well. 80,000 is barely the interest. It's not a payment. It's an insult. But, your mother said you used the money too." Gordon's voice faded. "Me? Did I ever see a cent in my account?" Ethan leaned forward. "Dad, the bank records are public. Every transaction is traceable. I can print them right now if you want to see." Gordon fell silent, his thumb rubbing absently against the paper cup. His shoulders were hunched. He looked like a tree bent by too many storms. Ethan looked at his father, and what he felt wasn't pity anymore. It was a strange, complicated grief. This man had lived his whole life under Lillian's shadow, his own will slowly extinguished by decades of submission. He'd stopped having opinions of his own a long time ago. "Dad," Ethan said, softer now, "go home. This isn't your fight. The court will make the right decision." Gordon raised his head. His eyes were wet and cloudy. He looked at his older son, lips trembling, and said the only thing he still believed, "Ethan, no matter what, he's still your brother." He stood up and walked toward the door, shoulders bent, shadow stretching long across the polished floor. The automatic doors slid open, and sunlight poured in, swallowing his small figure. Ethan sat motionless. He watched his father disappear into the light. Somewhere deep in his chest, something twinged, like a splinter being pulled out, leaving a tiny, empty hole. But he didn't follow. Some roads have to be walked alone. The 15 days expired. No money was returned. Henry kept calling from new numbers, begging, threatening, cycling through all the tactics. Ethan cut off every channel, letting nothing through. His lawyer filed the lawsuit as planned. Charge: damages for harm to company interests. Plaintiff: the company for which Ethan was the legal representative. Defendants: Henry and Cindy. Lillian was named as a third party due to the substantial amount she'd received without explanation. The night the papers were filed, Ethan and Anna sat on their balcony. Autumn was fully here now. The night air carried the scent of osmanthus from the garden below. Streetlights made dappled patterns through the leaves. Anna was curled in a wicker chair, wrapped in a blanket, holding a cup of hot tea. "Ethan," she asked softly, "have you thought about what you'll do after the case?" Ethan leaned back, looking at the few stars visible through the city's orange glow. There were never many, but a few always stubbornly shone through. "I want to quit my job," he said. Anna turned to look at him. She waited. "It's not because of the suspension," he said. "Even if the investigation clears me, I still messed up on procedure. I should have checked. But more than that." He paused, searching for words. "I've been at that company for 6 years. From entry-level to director. It looks like a success, but I was living for other people the whole time. For Mom. For Henry. For everyone else's expectations. I don't even know what I want anymore. I've spent so long being what everyone else wanted that I forgot I had a self to find." "What do you want to do?" Anna asked. Silence. "Then, start my own company. Brand consulting. It's what I know, what I love. No one else's expectations. No one else's debts. I sink or swim on my own terms." Anna set her tea down. She turned to face him fully, eyes catching the light. "Then do it. I'm with you." "But..." Ethan hesitated. "It's risky. If I fail. Then we try again." Her voice was matter-of-fact. "Ethan, you think too much and fear too much. You're afraid of disappointing your mother. Afraid of letting down your brother. Afraid of failing your boss. You put everyone's needs before your own. But you've already lost what you were most afraid of losing. So what's left to fear?" Ethan stared at her. Then he laughed, a real laugh, genuine and warm, like sunlight flooding into a room that had been closed too long. "You're right," he said. "The worst already happened, and I survived. I'm alive. There's nothing to be afraid of." He stood and walked to the railing, gripping it with both hands, and breathed deep. The osmanthus scent filled his lungs. The wind ruffled his hair. From this moment on, he was no longer the man defined by being the older brother. No longer the man pulled by his mother's moods and his brother's appetites. He was finally himself, whole, independent, and no longer needing anyone else's approval to know his worth. The court accepted the case. The lawyer said the first hearing would be in about a month. Meanwhile, the company investigation concluded. Ethan cooperated fully, submitting all the evidence of his unawareness, the text messages, the forged agreement, the money trail. After reviewing the materials, the committee's attitude shifted significantly. "Mr. Su," said Ms. Chen, the committee head, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, "we've seen similar cases. Most people either deflect or cover things up. You're the first to be this transparent and well-documented." Ethan offered a dry smile. "I thought about deflecting. But I've made my peace with owning my mistakes. The procedural violations. I'm responsible. But being set up through identity fraud. That's not mine to carry. Ms. Chen nodded. I appreciate that. Based on the evidence, there's no intent on your part. The violations will go on your file, but we'll recommend against criminal referral. That said. She paused, studying him. Your brother. I heard you're pursuing legal action. Yes, Ethan said without hesitation. Ms. Chen shook her head slowly. It's never easy, fighting your own blood. But I've been in this work long enough to know that sometimes, blood is just a convenient cover for exploitation. Taking this step takes courage. As Ethan was leaving, she called him back. There's something I should tell you, she said carefully. Your mother came here earlier this week. She asked to see you. Security turned her away, but she stood outside talking to several employees. The gist of what she said. She hesitated. What did she say? Ethan asked. That you're an unfilial son. That you've been manipulated by your wife. That you're falsely accusing your brother of theft. She said she's going to the media. Ms. Chen watched for his reaction. Ethan's expression didn't flicker. He nodded calmly. Thanks for telling me. In the elevator, he leaned against the railing and closed his eyes. Lillian coming to his workplace didn't surprise him. In fact, he'd have been surprised if she hadn't. His mother had only one way of handling problems, making noise. Every argument, every dispute, every conflict, she escalated. She raised the volume. She brought in witnesses. For her, reality was determined by the loudest voice in the room. But in the adult world, under the law, volume meant nothing. Tears proved nothing. Evidence spoke. The elevator doors opened. Ethan stepped out into the sunlit lobby, straightened his collar, and walked forward. He didn't look back. The trial was set for a Tuesday 1 month later. In the weeks leading up to it, Ethan made changes. He officially resigned from his company, amicably, with understanding on both sides. The disciplinary committee's final report concluded he'd been negligent in following procedures, but not malicious. A warning was issued and filed. Since he'd left, the warning had no practical effect. It was just a piece of paper in a file. He used his savings and a small loan to register his own consulting firm. 3 employees, including himself, in a small office space in a startup park. Modest, precarious, but for the first time in years, every morning he woke up excited to work. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Because it was his. Anna quit her job and joined him. 2-man team, him on strategy, her on finance and admin. They worked together, came home together, and fell into bed exhausted but satisfied. Their combined income was a fraction of what it used to be, but Ethan had never been more content. The cost was his extended family. Lillian was in full offensive mode. She called every relative, delivering tearful monologues about her ungrateful older son. In her version, Ethan was a parasite who'd stolen his brother's business, then turned around and sued him to cover his own crimes, dragging his own mother into court as well. The relatives reacted as expected. Aunts, uncles, cousins, Ethan received calls urging him to make peace, accusing him of going too far, telling him he'd changed, and not for the better. Ethan didn't argue. He simply said, "Once the trial's over, you'll see the evidence." Most didn't believe him. Some thought he was bluffing. It didn't matter. Truth didn't need everyone's approval, it just needed to be presented. The morning of the trial dawned unexpectedly clear and bright. Winter sunlight poured through the tall courthouse windows, laying golden squares across the floor. The courtroom smelled of old wood and paper, dusty, formal, serious. The air was still and cold, heavy with the weight of what was about to happen. Ethan and Anna sat at the plaintiff's table, their lawyer beside them. Across the aisle, at the defendant's table, Henry sat in an ill-fitting suit, his tie crooked, his face cycling between panic and resentment. Cindy sat beside him, heavy makeup, lips pressed into a thin line, glaring at Ethan. She looked like she wanted to claw his eyes out. In the gallery, first row, Lillian, wearing a red jacket, hair combed stiff, face set like a general riding into battle. Gordon sat next to her, eyes downcast, never raising them to meet his older son's gaze. Ethan met his mother's look briefly, then looked away. No challenge. No guilt. Just a distant, quiet calm. Lillian was obviously unsettled by his composure. She opened her mouth, but Gordon placed a hand on her arm and she closed it again. The judge entered. The hearing began. The plaintiff's lawyer laid out the case with devastating clarity. The company registration timeline. The payment trail. The recipients. Every fact connected to written evidence and electronic records. When the 2 text messages from Henry were displayed on the screen, a low murmur rippled through the courtroom. Defendant Henry Sue explicitly admits, the lawyer read, that he used the plaintiff's identity to register a company and receive funds without the plaintiff's knowledge. He further states that his actions were carried out with the tacit approval of the third party, Lillian Zhou. These communications clearly establish that the plaintiff, Ethan Sue, was not a participant in these actions, but a victim of identity fraud. Henry's face was white as paper. Cindy kept jabbing him with her elbow, whispering urgently. Henry just sat there, staring at the screen as if it would melt if he looked hard enough. The defense lawyer tried to frame it as family financial assistance, a misunderstanding due to lack of written agreements. If this was a family matter, the plaintiff's lawyer countered, then why route the funds through a company account under false procurement claims? Why create an elaborate chain of transactions, rather than simply transferring money directly? If Mr. Sue was supporting his brother's business, as the defense claims, why did 470,000 yuan end up in the account of his mother, someone entirely unrelated to any business? The defense lawyer faltered. In the gallery, Lillian shot to her feet. That was my son's gift to me. The judge's gavel cracked down. If the gallery cannot remain silent, I will have you removed. Lillian was pulled back into her seat by Gordon, her face purple, breathing heavily. Ethan watched her, and for a moment, just a moment, he felt something like pity. She'd spent so many years believing her own version of reality that the real thing was impossible for her to recognize. The trial lasted nearly 3 hours. With each piece of evidence, Henry's defense collapsed further. Even his own lawyer shifted strategy from full denial to damage control. The final blow came when the plaintiff's counsel called a witness, Leo Liu, the so-called friend who'd supposedly promised to partner with Henry on the hot pot restaurant. Leo Liu was a mousy man in his early 30s, owner of a small catering company. On the stand, under the judge's questioning, he said something that made everyone's jaw drop. "I do know Henry," he testified, clearly uncomfortable. "I've been in the restaurant business. But I never agreed to partner on a hot pot restaurant. He asked me once, casually over a meal, how much it would cost to open one. I said maybe 800,000. After that, he kept coming to me about doing some accounting transfers, moving money around. I got suspicious and cut off contact." The courtroom erupted. Henry's face went from white to gray. Cindy clapped her hands over her mouth. In the gallery, Lillian's body crumpled in her seat like someone had pulled the bones out. Ethan watched, feeling nothing. He'd already processed this, the cold, brutal truth of it. The truth was stark and simple. His younger brother had fabricated an entire business venture. He'd used that fiction to convince their mother, to secure Ethan's trust, and to siphon 1.8 million from Ethan's project. Henry had spent nearly $1 million himself. Cindy had taken 200,000. Lillian had received $470,000. Not a single cent went to any entrepreneurship. The judge announced a recess, reserving judgment. As Ethan walked through the courthouse corridor afterward, he met Lillian. She was stumbling through the crowd, hair disheveled, makeup ruined, her sharp eyes gone to dull shock. She saw him. Her step faltered. For a moment, just a moment, the mother and son faced each other across the stream of people moving between them. Her lips parted. Maybe she meant to curse. Maybe she meant to explain. Maybe she meant to beg. Ethan never found out. He turned his head away, took Anna's hand, and walked in the other direction. Behind him, Lillian's voice rose, thin and wild, "Ethan Sue. You come back here. You've destroyed your brother. You've destroyed this family." He didn't slow. He walked through the courthouse lobby, pushed through the heavy glass doors, and stepped into the winter sun. The warmth hit his face. It felt good. This, he thought, is what a new beginning feels like. The verdict came down 1 week later. Ethan was in his new office, wrapping up a conference call with a client. The room was small, barely 20 square meters, but bright and clean. Anna's potted plants grew on the windowsill, green tendrils stretching toward the winter light. His lawyer's message appeared on his phone. Verdict is in. We won. Defendants Henry Sue and Cindy Lin are ordered to return all misappropriated funds, 1.8 million yuan, within 30 days. Lillian Zhou is held jointly liable for 470,000 yuan. Court costs assigned to the defendants. Ethan read the words 3 times. His hand was steady. His heart was calm. There was no exhilaration, no triumph. Just a quiet, grounded sense of release, like reaching the end of a long journey, setting down the pack, and sitting by the road to rest. The exhaustion was there too, but it was a good exhaustion. The kind that came from work done. He texted Anna, "We won." Her reply came instantly, "I know." Then another, "What do you want for dinner?" Ethan thought for a moment. "The tomato noodle soup you make." "Just that." "Just that." She sent a smiley face. Ethan set down the phone and leaned back in his chair. Outside, the winter sun laid its pale gold across the city skyline. He remembered something from childhood. One New Year, his grandmother bought both brothers new shoes. His were black and plain. Henry's had cartoon faces that lit up. Henry wore his for one day, decided he liked Ethan's better, threw a tantrum. Lillian took the shoes off Ethan's feet and gave them to Henry, then gave the cartoon shoes to Ethan. "You're the big brother. Be generous." Ethan wore those cartoon shoes to school. Kids laughed at him all semester. That was the first time he remembered feeling unfair. And the first time he'd learned endurance. He'd endured for 20 years. Henry taking his dowry money. His mother giving away his apartment. His identity stolen, his career wrecked, his reputation smeared. He was done enduring. Not because he'd changed, but because he'd realized something. True filial piety isn't unlimited obedience. True brotherhood isn't one-sided sacrifice. Any relationship worth keeping requires mutual respect. Without that foundation, blood is just a rope that binds, not a bond that connects. That night, Ethan and Anna squeezed into their small kitchen together, cooking a simple meal. Tomato noodle soup, 2 side dishes. Steam rising. The table set with mismatched bowls they'd had since their first apartment. They sat across from each other, eating and talking, about the company, about travel plans, about when they might think about having kids. Outside, the city lights flickered to life. Somewhere, a firework burst over the skyline, a store opening, maybe, or a celebration. Ethan watched the trails of light fade into the dark. He realized he hadn't looked at the night sky in a very long time. He'd always kept his head down, watching the ground, avoiding potholes. Now he looked up, and the stars were still there. They'd been there all along. The verdict didn't make things clean. Henry and Cindy didn't comply with the payment order. The lawyer initiated enforcement proceedings. The court seized Henry's apartment and vehicle. Cindy's jewelry and assets were inventoried. When word reached Lillian, she cracked. She called Ethan from borrowed phones, dozens, hundreds of calls. The messages started with pleas, escalated to threats, finally became apocalyptic. May you die miserably. Your wife is a curse. I wish I'd never given birth to you. Ethan blocked every number. But one thing he hadn't expected, after enforcement began, Gordon came to see him. It was a Saturday. Ethan was alone in the office, catching up on work. The doorbell rang, he thought it was a delivery. When he opened the door, his father was standing outside in an old winter coat, carrying 2 plastic bags. Dad? Ethan blinked. Gordon didn't step inside. He just held out the bags. These are things your mother left at home. Some clothes you wore as a kid. Your school certificates. And a photo of you and your brother when you were little. I thought, you might want to keep them. Ethan took the bags. Inside, a faded elementary school uniform. Yellowed honor certificates, excellent student, math competition winner, class leader. And a photograph, Ethan at 10, Henry at 7, both in new holiday clothes, laughing at the camera in front of their old house. Ethan looked at the photo, throat tightening. Dad, come in. Gordon hesitated, then stepped inside. He sat on the sofa, his back bent, looking around the small office. His eyes fell on the business license, Yuan Brand Consulting Company, Limited. And his mouth twitched, almost a smile. You started a company, he said. Yeah. Good. Good. He repeated it, then picked up the glass of water Ethan handed him and fell silent. They sat there a long time. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, drawing stripes across the floor. Finally, Gordon spoke. Ethan, I'm sorry. His voice was barely a whisper. But the weight of those 2 words filled the room. Ethan said nothing. Your father is a useless man, Gordon continued, staring at his calloused hands. Your mother, she's always been in charge. I gave her nothing. The only thing I could give was submission. When she treated you badly, I saw it. I hurt for you. But I was afraid. Afraid if I spoke up, the whole family would fall apart. His voice cracked. Tears welled in his eyes, sliding down the deep folds of his face. Then you grew up. You had success. And her demands grew bigger. I wanted to stop her. Every time I opened my mouth, she'd scream at me, useless, weak, no money, no backbone. I was so ashamed, Ethan. Every day I felt like a failure. I still do. I didn't protect you. I didn't protect anyone. I just hid. He covered his face. His shoulders shook, releasing decades of suppressed grief. Ethan watched his father break down. He'd been angry at this silent man, angry he'd never defended him, never said a word while Lillian and Henry took everything. But now he saw something clearly, his father hadn't refused to fight. He'd just never won. Lillian ran the family with force. Gordon ran it with silence. They were 2 sides of the same sickness. Dad, Ethan said, his voice softer than he expected, you don't need to apologize. You didn't fail me. You just didn't have the strength to protect me. That's different. Gordon looked up through his tears. I won't forgive Henry, Ethan said steadily. He destroyed my career. He nearly destroyed my marriage and my life. The law will have its way. I won't stop it. But you, Dad, he paused. You're still my father. That's never going to change. You can come see me anytime. There's a room for you. Gordon stared. His mouth worked silently. Finally, okay. He stood, wiped his face with his sleeve, and moved toward the door. Then he stopped. Your mother. Dad. Ethan's voice was gentle but final. Let's not talk about her. Gordon nodded. He opened the door and walked out. Ethan stood at the window, watching his father's bent figure grow smaller until it disappeared around the corner. He looked down at the old photo in his hand. Two brothers, still innocent, still laughing. He turned it over. On the back, in his own childhood handwriting, me and my brother, brothers forever. He stared at the words. Then he placed the photo at the bottom of his desk drawer. Some promises, some memories, they belonged in the past. Reality was something else. Months passed. Life found its rhythm. Ethan's consulting business grew slowly but steadily. His reputation and connections from his former job helped. He landed a few solid clients. Half a year later, the company had grown from 2 employees to 5, and they'd moved from the startup cubicle to a proper office. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. Anna was pregnant. That happened the following spring. March sun, warm and bright. Magnolias blooming white and pink on every street. Ethan accompanied Anna to the hospital. When he saw the sonogram, a tiny blur, no bigger than a peanut, he stared for a long time. What's wrong? Not happy. Anna laughed. Ethan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His eyes went red, and in the middle of the hospital corridor, surrounded by strangers, he pulled Anna into his arms and cried. Not pain. Something new. He was going to be a father. He would give this child everything, not material excess, but fair love. Respectful love. Love without favoritism. He would never put the burden of older sibling on any child's shoulders. He would teach his child, you don't need to please anyone at your own expense. Your feelings matter. Your boundaries matter. When Gordon heard the news, he called. His voice was older now, but bright with joy. Ethan, I heard Anna is expecting. That's wonderful. He paused, hesitant. Could I come see you? Just for a little while. Anytime, Ethan said. Gordon came bearing gifts, homemade pickled vegetables, eggs from the countryside, a few handmade wool sweaters. The sweaters were lumpy and unevenly colored, but Ethan could tell his father had knitted them himself, stitch by stitch. The love was in the imperfection. Your mother, Gordon began, then stopped. She knows about the pregnancy. She asked me to bring this. He handed Ethan a red envelope. Inside was a bankbook in Lillian's name, with a balance of 83,000 yuan. It's all she has left, Gordon said quietly. I know you don't need the money. I know you can't forgive her. But she wanted you to have it, for her grandchild. Ethan closed the bankbook and gave it back. Dad, take this back. The child doesn't need money. They need a healthy family environment. And she can't give that. Gordon nodded slowly, put the bankbook away, and said nothing more. He just sat on the sofa, working the knitting needles, adding rows to the tiny sweater. Afternoon light caught the white in his hair, the clumsiness of his stitches, the rough warmth of his hands. Ethan watched him. This silent man had loved him, in his own way, all along. It had just been buried under layers of circumstance, under his wife's dominance, under a lifetime of crushing pressure. But now that Gordon had found the courage to emerge from the shadows, that love was still there. That was enough for Ethan. Time moved. Anna's belly grew. Full, round, heavy with life. She radiated a gentle glow, like grain ripening in the sun. Ethan threw himself into his work and her care, learned to cook soups, to give massages, to wake up in the night and knead her cramping calves. He attended every appointment, staring at the ultrasound screen like he was auditing a 10 million yuan contract. He was determined to be present, to be there, to be the father his father had never been able to be. Late September, Anna went into labor. Ethan paced the hospital corridor. His thoughts tangled, his childhood, the unfairness, the trial, his mother's screaming, his father's stooped back and knitting needles. Then Anna. She had walked every step with him. Held his hand when everything fell apart. Told him the truth when no one else would. Without her, he'd still be in that swamp. Without her, he'd still be living for other people. The delivery room doors swung open. A nurse came out carrying a small, wrinkled, red-faced bundle. "Congratulations, it's a girl. Mother and child are fine." Ethan reached for the infant. His hands trembled so badly he almost dropped her. He looked down at that tiny face, squeezed eyes, button nose, and his tears started falling, hot and fast, soaking the cotton blanket. "Hi," he whispered, voice breaking. "I'm your dad." The baby couldn't understand. But her lips moved, just a little, as if in reply. Ethan made a silent promise. He would love this child with his whole being. Not with indulgence. Not with favoritism. But with fairness, with respect, with boundaries. He would protect her boundaries the way he'd never protected his own. He would teach her that she never had to please anyone at her own expense, not even her parents. Because your life is yours. Just like I finally learned. The baby's 1-month celebration was a small affair. Gordon came in a new navy jacket, his hair freshly dyed, his face clean-shaven. He held his granddaughter, eyes wet, repeating the same words over and over, "She's beautiful. She takes after Anna." Ethan noticed his father's phone ring twice. Gordon checked the screen each time, then quietly rejected the call. "Her?" Ethan asked. Gordon nodded, looking uncomfortable. "Your mother, she wants to see the baby. She said she knows she was wrong. She wants to apologize." Ethan was silent for a moment. "Dad," he finally said, "tell her I received the apology. But a meeting isn't possible. The baby is too young. I don't want any negative influences around her." Gordon opened his mouth, then closed it. He nodded. "That's fair," he murmured. "You've built a good life. That's all I wanted. Everything else, we'll see." Ethan looked at his father holding the infant, ancient, wrinkled hands cradling soft new skin. Light poured over them both, bridging decades. This was life, he thought. Not perfect. Not complete. But full of moments that still mattered. That night, after the guests had gone, Ethan sat alone in his study. Outside, the city glittered. Fireworks bloomed in the distance, someone else's celebration. They lit the sky briefly, then faded. He opened his desk drawer and found the old photograph. 2 brothers, new clothes, old house, innocent grins. He turned it over. His childhood handwriting, "Me and my brother, brothers forever." He looked at it a long time. Then he picked up a pen and wrote below it, in clear adult strokes, "But some things are more important than blood." He returned the photo to the drawer and closed it. The study door cracked open. Anna peeked in, the sleeping baby in her arms. "Thinking about something?" she whispered. Ethan stood, crossed the room, and took the infant. He kissed her forehead. In sleep, she grasped his collar with a tiny fist. "I was thinking," he said, "what kind of home we want to give her." Anna leaned against his shoulder. She looked down at their daughter, peaceful and warm. "A fair home," she said softly. One without favoritism. One where she'll never have to sacrifice herself to make anyone else happy. Ethan nodded. Outside, another firework burst, showering the night sky with color. He held his daughter, his wife beside him, and watched the city that never slept. On the horizon, a full moon rose, bright and cold, spilling silver onto every lighted window. Behind those windows, how many families were laughing, crying, reconciling, breaking? How many people were still trapped in the chains of blood, still fighting to climb out? Ethan didn't know. But he knew this: he was done looking backward. His eyes were fixed forward now, toward the long, unknown life of the small person in his arms. The end of one story is always the beginning of another. Outside, the city glowed under the moon. And for the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel like he was standing outside someone else's life. He was right where he belonged.